Like, we are moving into the age of empires again. We are going to have the great Goliaths of a kind of Russian-Chinese alliance with a massive American empire, seeing to what degree it can concede territory and negotiate with that empire, and what degree it has to have a hostile relationship with it. And you're going to have these competing empires emerging. And again, empire is a massive part of the Christian conception of the polity. You know, we believe that there was this huge evil empire that spread across the entire civilized world, that John Henry Newman referred to as the Great Antichrist, and that was the Roman Empire. And one of the great ironies of Christian history is that the visible head of the church that Christ establishes, St. Peter, goes and sets up his headquarters inside the headquarters of the Great Antichrist, and then declares that, you know, everyone must honour the emperor in his first letter to the church. And of course, within 3 centuries, you have the legalization of that religion, and then less than half a century after that, you have it proclaimed as the official religion of the empire. And then what was once the Great Antichrist becomes essentially the lay and temporal dimension of the church. It becomes the visible mystical body, and it spreads Christianity all across the world. And that's one of the kind of great ironies of Christian history. And I wonder whether and these are just questions, Brian. I mean, I'm not guessing what's going to happen in the future, but I wonder whether we are seeing the collapse of a nation-based social order. We are seeing the rise of a strictly empire-based social order that is going to be very much complicated by the new technologies, particularly the technologies to the degree they are incorporated into a surveillance network, and we all carry them in our trouser pockets. How that might be complicated by an increasingly technologically centralized empire under which we might have to struggle and toil. And finally, the degree to which such a chaotic, largely secular imperial model can then, like it did in the first few centuries after Christ, can be redeemed and salvaged and brought into the fold of the church for the evangelization of the world.
I think it's not an unreasonable position to take, that we are entering an era where Christianity is increasingly being seen as a high status belief. I think Jordan Peterson and many of the people that surround him, for all of his flaws, was part of the first emergence of this, where you could talk about the Bible in public, and not only would it be seen as respectable, but highly desirable to be engaged in that conversation. And since then, quite a significant number of people have, even people like Richard Dawkins, sort of almost bending over backwards to call themselves or attach themselves to Christianity, calling himself a cultural Christian, and still signalling that he's really a true atheist deep down, but something that he would have probably thought a quite silly thing to proclaim in public a couple of decades ago. But all over the place, I think you're seeing the status of Christianity being elevated quite significantly. And I think that may well play out in the imperial arena. I mean, you and I know a number of people who are in the orbit of the incoming administration in America, like J.D. Vance is a friend of people we've had on this podcast and that you know quite well. The idea that these future empires are going to be secular, that I find that completely unconvincing. Now, they may not be exactly what we want them to be, but it seems, at least in the American and wider sense, that there is a re-emergence of an imperial Christianity. And obviously it's possible that that's going to be corrupted and spoiled, but I don't think you can always approach that with cynicism.
Well, I mean,
or I certainly don't feel like I want to.
Some of the examples that you're giving me certainly foment my own cynicism. I think it's all a massive Trojan horse.
The thing is that I feel like, just a final thought, that the Trojan horse is the other way round, because so many of these individuals who we look at, and quite rightly, quite cynically about the way that they're doing a volte-face on the question of Christianity, they're boomers, but they're on the way out. But as Christianity becomes higher status, and it's signalled by all of these people who are on the way out, it's going to create permission for much more serious individuals who are much more serious about their adherence to the great apostolic tradition, to fill in once these upper echelons are signalling that Christianity is the status thing, but it's the boomers who don't really believe it, and they're just jumping on a bandwagon they think is the safe place to be. But what they're doing is creating an environment where people who are much more serious individuals can begin to emerge or be drawn into areas of influence and power. So I think the Trojan horse goes in the other direction. You've got this beautiful wooden horse that's made of boomers who don't actually really want anything to change, and they're just kind of dressing their liberalism up in Christian words as a way of trying to stop the cathedral from burning down. But inside is a bunch of absolute fanatics for the imperial reign of Christ. And maybe they don't all have exactly the right views, but they are really imbued with a truly Christian spirit. So that's where my optimism comes from.